I'm Roy Joy Kinlaw.
And I'm Chrissy Van. We're two dreamers on two wheels inspired by our community.
And celebrating the voices we're just lucky enough to discover along the ride. So if not already, like, subscribe, follow along, do what you gotta do to not miss an episode.
When it comes to riding a motorcycle, there's so much to be thankful for. Freedom, friendships, epic stories, and lasting memories. Most riders recognize this and openly express gratitude for what motorcycling has brought into their lives. And these moments of reflection contribute to an overall level of happiness. But why? Why do we feel so good when we're simply feeling thankful? Today's podcast is Gratitude for the Ride. We'll talk about the psychological, physical, and social benefits of gratitude, how it can radically change your life, and how to start implementing gratitude into your life daily. This is the Motivation.
So we all know and we all experience gratitude and thankfulness. Like Chrissy just mentioned in the intro, is that it feels really good. And it feels so good that so often we chase it, right? We want things to work out. We want things to go our way. We have a great experience and we feel thankful and we feel gratitude. But what about all those moments that things don't necessarily go our way, or it isn't a great day, or it's just kind of an okay, mundane day? And then we have different feelings around that, right? We suddenly feel almost like a level of suffering. Suffering turns into resentment or jealousy or comparison, whatever that looks like, but it doesn't feel so great, right? We want that feel good feeling back. We want that gratitude and thankfulness. But the irony of it is that the antidote to suffering is gratitude. And the thing that we all kind of miss, including myself for such a long time, is that gratitude doesn't happen to us. It's not these things that take place on the outside that just give us this feeling. It's an experience that we choose for ourselves. It's available to us at all times, But we don't. We look outside of ourselves and we wait for it to take place, or we go in search of it to then get that feeling. And we don't recognize or notice that it just lives and breathes right here all around us. And the way to access it is this opportunity for a practice to sit and witness and notice and make the choice to make that focus. What is abundant? What is working for me in the most simplest of moments? And then when you have those really beautiful moments that brought you easily gratitude or easily thankfulness, you feel it even deeper or further. And in those moments of not going our way, those hardships, challenges, we can still see a bigger picture within that. Doesn't mean we're grateful because these horrible things have happened, or we're grateful that, something really disappointing takes place. It doesn't become our only focal point, because we've had this daily practice of noticing so many beautiful things around us, if not simply just that we have breath in our lungs, because that's something. We're still alive. And that in itself can bring such an amazing feeling. And we're meant to do this. And Chrissy's going to talk a little bit further about this as well. And why I know we're meant to do this is because more and more is coming out about the benefits to our mind and body, how it can actually change the mapping of your brain of a practice of gratitude, how it can turn pessimists into optimists within 21 days. Well, maybe not all the way, but 20% they say so far. But it really is. It's this choice from becoming somebody that is thankful and grateful when things work out for them, to living gratefully, living with gratitude. And when you can make the shift, or you begin the shift, which isn't overnight, which like any practice, anything you cultivate, you scaffold, you work on, it becomes part of your being. It is a game changer. It changes everything.
It really does change everything. It's funny, when I reflect on my personal journey with gratitude, it blows my mind of how long I was practicing it, but thinking or mistaking it for myself being an eternal optimist, where really in most situations, I was merely practicing gratitude, which altered my perception. I've talked about it on the podcast before. I grew up with a chronically ill dad. We spent so many days in hospitals, I can't even begin to tell you. My report cards very often were absent 42 days, a term, and that wasn't an unusual occurrence. However, I don't remember having an unhappy childhood. And I attribute that truly because my mom's always been on this new age side. My dad was always very open with conversations about looking at the things that we did have. And in a lot of instances, when talking about that aspect of my life, it was the fact, the only way I can refer to it, I came from the full house family. We were surrounded by a lot of love. We had people that supported us and gave us what we need. And my parents always kind of taught me to recognize that. And that's where to shift the focus. Same thing. I was 17 when he passed away. And obviously, there is a sadness attached to that. And grief, I think, is another topic that we'll tackle in the future. But I think why I never sat too long in that space, and even in my adult life, I've never used any of those occurrences of my youth as an excuse for where I was going in my adulthood, is because I had shifted my perception over that whole experience at the fact that, yes, it was a terrible thing that I lost my dad at 17, but how thankful and grateful I was to have known this man that's inspired my life for 17 years. I've always had gratitude around that. And this practice of gratitude has completely served my direction wholeheartedly in my adult life. Any obstacle, big or small, I've always been able to do a lens shift to pull back and look at the simplicity. Now, Laura, you said in your intro there, something as simple as this breath. For me, and another thing I know I've mentioned several times, when I find myself in a state of suffering, which generally is, yes, induced by circumstances that you're allowing to pull your emotions, I will find myself wanting to retreat into nature. And yes, we know that nature has so many incredible benefits for our mind, spirit, body, soul. But the true reason why that is my space is because I can look around. I mean, for us, we're in British Columbia. We are spoiled with endless vistas that just take your breath away. But I literally look around at the simplicity and complexity simultaneously of nature. And you feel grateful to just be on this earth with these magnificent ecosystems and wildlife. And you literally could just pull back to even looking at a leaf and understand the simplicity of this earth. So it just goes to show there's always something to be grateful for, but gratitude is a practice, because when we are stuck in that state of suffering, if you're not actively pursuing a grateful heart, that suffering can take you down and you may miss what's right in front of you that really can help you change your perception. I think gratitude is a massive lens perception. And I know that there's a lot of complexities that take place in the brain when we do this practice. Hopefully daily is where we can get you to after the conversation, because you're going to realize what a big role this can play in your life.
When you talk about nature for me was my gateway drug, if you will. It was it was the area that ever since I was a teenager, even a young child, I had this like deep connection with the outdoors. I sought out always kind of being on my own outside. Being at the farm, kind of, I'd go take blankets out in the fields and kind of lay on my own or go on these little like excursions. We had a lot of forest around where we lived, so I was always off in the trails, that sort of thing. And then as I grew older, I would chase the sunsets. I would wake up early for the sunrises. I always knew that there was this deep connection to what was just out there in nature. And I got that gratitude and that feeling that you get that the world is so much bigger than you, and that there's something so extraordinary about being human. But then on the flip side, I absolutely, without a doubt, chased for most of my life up until now, looking on the outside for external forces to bring me that feeling again, things going my way, my expectations being met. And I spent a lot of time suffering. I spent resentment, jealousy, all those different things, just this entitlement around this life. And it wasn't until I started to deep dive into kind of like having my existential crisis. I always was looking to understand human behavior and so forth, as we've talked about, numerous times, but really being like, how can I be just an overall more connected, happier, peaceful human? Because I dealt with so much anxiety and depression that it just felt like I was always living in a perpetual state of chaos within myself. And I came across the kind of work or the studies and the literature and the speakers on gratitude. And it was kind of like, yeah, sure, great. They'll give us the world. Can't hurt. And then I put it into practice and I started doing, that's the first thing I do in the morning is my gratitude of and I really have a think and it can be just looking out my window and noticing something beautiful. And all of a sudden I realized there was so much around me that I haven't been noticing. There was so much that was working for me. And there was so many blessings in my life that I just had come to expect or had taken for granted. And all of a sudden I noticed that things just started to change and I started to notice, my senses all started to heighten. I could smell, I could hear, everything just started to just make this shift over time. Now I've been doing these gratitude every morning for 2 years now, I guess. And it has been, maybe the biggest thing that has shifted in my life as far as when things don't go my way. I no longer look at it as it's happening to me. I look at it as either happening for me, or I just look at it as something that just is or just was. And I don't create all these emotional attachments around it. And there isn't this suddenly this like, that's not fair. And this dialogue and the stories and all this kind of stuff. It's lighter. I'm able to move through things differently. I'm able to just kind of understand the fragility of life on a new level. And that's not just to gratitude. We spoke also about there's been a lot of illness and death in my family and friends over the past few years that has just absolutely rocked my world. But gratitude has been the difference of suffering through it and experiencing it. Doesn't mean I still don't cry my eyes out or I, rage and beat the shit out of a bed some days and all those different things. I still have these human experiences and these human emotions, but they don't take over my world. And I can able to kind of pull back and have a more expansive viewpoint and still have an appreciation for, the birds singing outside, which I didn't even notice the birds were birds outside of, they were birds prior, and now I have an appreciation while I'm still having sadness or all, it's the thing that tethers me to such a bigger meaning in this life, I guess.
No, and it's exactly that. Because you don't stay in those spaces, because like anything, when you talk about optimism, or in this case, gratitude, there's often this misconception that there's a skipping of feeling the things. There's no fast track through that shit.
No.
Life can be brutal and you acknowledge that. But at the same time, what Lori is explaining, and something, as I say, I accidentally was implementing in my life before I even understood it and its role. And obviously, when you have an understanding, you're able to use it in such a bigger way. But it really does give you this insight into how to move through it, because where your mind goes, the energy flows. Where your focus is, generally, that is where you're going to hold space for yourself. And so if you're focusing on the suffering, more than likely you're going to experience unnecessary prolonged suffering. And if that's all you're looking for, then that's all you're drawing into your life. Where on the flip side, even in those tough times, if you're able to find those pieces to be thankful for, and your focus is projected onto that, it is incredible over what you invite into your life. I have been astounded on so many occasions, or even those hard moments where you're so tripped up and caught offside and you think, I won't possibly have that fleeting moment that, how could I possibly get out of this hole? And it just reminds you of how achievable it is. On top of it, being thankful it makes you feel good. And this is now scientifically proven. There's more and more studies and research that are going into the subject of gratitude. It is far beyond this woo-woo new age term that's thrown around or what they slap on a journal to sell it to you. I was doing a little bit of research before our chat, Lori, and it was like study after study talking about the mapping in our neural pathway systems, how you get those incredible boosts of dopamine and serotonin and how that flows even stronger. It's like you're building this circuitry for your brain that ultimately is going to just implement more positivity into your life because of that perceptual flip.
So one thing that is super, super fucking cool is the brain doesn't know the difference between having an experience and reliving an experience and or creating an experience. If you visualize and you work through, and think of how it feels and how the smells and the sights and all those things, and you even just have a relived moment of something beautiful or something that you're grateful for, whether it's happened or hasn't happened, your brain doesn't know the difference between experiencing it and you imagining it. It builds the neurons fire and wire together the exact same way, regardless. And so when you have these experiences in real life, or if you're just doing your gratitude journal or your gratitude exercises or writing things down, your brain and body are getting all the benefits. The same way as if, you got the car park space when you needed it, or, you got the job you always wanted, or you got to see that friend that you haven't seen in the years, whatever that looks like, or you had the best shower of your life, after camping for a weekend, your brain doesn't
Without the mosquitoes.
Yeah, after the mosquitoes, we had half it. Skeetergate. And it's just the coolest thing in the entire world, because you realize how much that we live so much with the world playing such a huge role on how we feel about like what happens externally, which what actually matters is how the choices we make internally. And then that perpetuates the life that we go out and live externally. It changes your vibrations. It changes so that the energy that you're putting out, therefore you're bringing back in, just by gratitude alone, you are raising your vibrations immediately.
Well, and one of the things that I think is cool about that is you spoke obviously to the psychological as well as physical benefits of this, but it enhances your social interaction so much. And when you talk about vibrational energy, and if people listening kind of reflect on those around your life, you can pretty much feel from others if they are in that grateful space, for lack of a better term. You literally can feel when somebody is in that elevated state. And you certainly can feel when somebody is addicted to the state of suffering, because what happens when you spend a lot of time around them? Often you feel that energy shift that you essentially have to combat so that you also don't have that rub off on you. I know in one of our previous episodes, we talked about it like a virus that will drag you down. But if you are practicing gratitude, the enhancement in your social interactions can be so profound, because you're holding space for other people in your life in this new light, in this new way. And you're really having these genuine social connections that you really care about and appreciate. Having the appreciation for other people. Do you know how good it feels to thank someone as well? It's one thing to come from a grateful heart for yourself. I do the same thing. My alarm goes off in the morning. I normally spend about 5 minutes before I get out of bed to just reset my headspace, think about the positives, especially if I have a stressful day ahead, focusing on things I'm thankful for, and then get started. But how good is it when you're going around and somebody gives the pat on the back or says thanks for something you did? So knowing the effect that that can have, spreading this grateful attitude and showing appreciation for other people in our lives, that has a symbiotic effect as well. I think that it's one of the easiest ways to heighten someone else's day into a better experience than they may have been living previously, because you never know when other people need that little nudge of a glimmer of a brighter part of their day, because we know that not all days are good days. But again, that's kind of a matter of perspective as well.
Yeah, because when you're coming from that place of gratitude, you're detaching from your storyline. You're detaching from those insecurities. You're detaching from comparison, the you're detaching from so many things that shrink you as a person, that kind of put you in your own little prison. And so when you step out into the world and you're coming from an expansive place, you're able to be present with them and see people through a clearer lens rather than all see them through your attachments, and then wondering, do they really even think that was funny? Well, maybe I didn't say that right. Maybe, and second guessing everything you say, or not being your true self because you're terrified of that being not hitting or landing or judged. And then all of a sudden you got to walk away and you're like, that wasn't my best. That wasn't my best friendship performance. You're just not, that's not even on the radar. You're going out there and you're just having the focus is in and around the fact that, isn't this amazing? I get to spend time with my friends or people, or seeing somebody in a clearer world or a clearer perspective of maybe they are having their own thing, going through their own thing with the stranger on the street that you've just shown a little bit of love, empathy, appreciation, that sort of thing. And it's just, it allows clarity, because we just live in such a bubble of our own neuroses and our own narcissism and all of that. And gratitude is the elixir. It's the elixir to just be like, think of just nature in the scope of like mountains and oceans and deserts and just all that. And then all the animals and all the people and all of this. And you're just like, okay, like how much cool shit is just happening everywhere. And the fact that I'm even around here on this like magical planet to have this existence, when you kind of get expansive and then narrow it down to like, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and this beautiful. So when the hard times come, which are inevitable, it's part of the human experience. Yes, they feel, they hurt, they're all these different things, but they're a part of the bigger picture. They aren't the picture.
Definitely. And it really mitigates that need that a lot of human beings start to get, because we live in a world that's designed to distract you and make you feel like,
yes,
I don't have enough. The have not syndrome, the comparison is the thief of joy, the Joneses. You start to look into all these outside sources to fill. And again, it is designed that way. Literally, I think there's a lot of powers that be that want you to have your eyes closed, your heart closed to all of this. And who knows, maybe that's why the practice of gratitude, because I do feel for so long, even utilizing the term, it's slapped with this woo-woo label as if it's new age. But why can't it be that simple? Why shouldn't it be that simple? Of course it is that simple. And it's not that hard to integrate in your life and have monumental life shifts at any point.
It's quite literally it's quite literally 5 minutes in the morning is what it takes me to write that down. And actually I need to get back in the practice of this, but I used to do it before bed as well, of all the things that I was grateful for, or the top things that I was grateful for that day. Simple, 5 minutes.
Well, totally. And I think the good point that you have there is that it's something that you should have daily. That's the part, because
most important part, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Because just in speaking about all those external distractions, they don't go away. They tend to get even bigger when it's almost like the universe knows when you could be swayed, where all these it's like other beings out there, like, we're going to get you and rope you into the negative side kind of thing. And you're like, no, I need to practice this daily, because then basically the best comparison I can come, when you're riding your motorcycle and you've got shit all over your visor and you're still thinking, well, if I just pull off and clear this off, it's going to be fine. And then another big bug splats on the front. The ride is not enjoyable when you have shit all over your visor. I don't care who you are. Whereas imagine gratitude daily is starting every day with a fresh, clean visor. You can clearly see all the turns, all the incredible movements, all the incredible scenery around you, and you're going to appreciate it in new light instead of having a ride where you feel bitter because your thing's covered in crap.
Absolutely. Whatever you're focused on in life expands. And if you start your day focusing on the things that are working for you, if you are focusing on the things that are beautiful in this world, or outside your door, or right in your apartment, if you're focusing on the blessings, that is what will expand that day. But if you are letting your thoughts run amok in the morning, which they do if you do not step in to intervene, especially if you're one of the folks that check their phone first thing in the morning, God bless you. Only God can help you now. But it's one of those, but like, no, it's that thing of like, you mentioned this before. There is so many people working diligently and organizingly, brilliantly to infiltrate our thoughts in a way that distract us, keep us against one another, and keep us insecure and confused, that you have to organize your own ass. You have to put in just as much or a little bit more work than all the other folks that are trying to make you, into one of their little toy soldiers. And because here's the thing, this is how we're supposed to function. And it is their job, quite literally, to make a lot of money is to create a virus within ourselves. And they've been tremendously successful. And this isn't new. This isn't just with social media. They've just gotten better at it. And this isn't a conspiracy theory. This just fucking is. Like, I get ignorance is bliss, but like, we got a crisis on our hands with mental health. This is not bliss. Nobody's rocking bliss here. And so we cannot be ignorant towards it anymore. And this is just such a beautiful, simple strategy to step into the life that we, our body, minds, and soul, were forever ready to step into. Kids walk around with gratitude just exuding from them. Like a bug poops on them. They think it's the funniest thing on earth. Like,
apparently I think it's still hilarious.
100%. And it's that thing of it's worked out of us over time deliberately. And so you have to understand too, that like all of these things are part of our foundation, and it gets covered up by the stuff and the suffering that creates the suffering. And that's why gratitude, like I spoke to before, and this isn't something I have coined, but this is so many experts, and this is spiritual teachers and so forth that just constantly reference, this is the antidote to suffering. And we are all suffering. And it's just such a simple tonic to take.
Definitely. And one thing that I want to point out, because we never know who is listening when they're listening, and thank you. We are grateful that you are here. But should there be someone who's in that darkness right now or in the throes of life, and we both know how dark those spaces can be, and you're thinking, well, fuck, you have not walked in my shoes. This couldn't possibly be the antidote to how I'm feeling. It literally is just taking that space to even recognize you're hearing voices right now that want to create a space where we can talk about how to elevate ourselves and level up. Just look around you and focus on one beautiful thing. Like, it literally is one step that you take. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about the frequency, the nice thing is, and I know we've chatted about momentum before, that's exactly what transpires when you do this daily practice. It gets easier over time. It builds over time. It expands over time. You'll start recognizing the benefits more and more over time, but you got to stay consistent.
Everything you just said, Chrissy, 1000%. That's the key. Is you have to be consistent, and you have to give it time. And even if you're uncomfortable and you feel like there's nothing to be thankful for, you just do it. It's just even a matter of being the fact that I have a piece of food in my fridge. It can be as neutral as that. It can be that you turned on and you have electricity, or you have water to drink. What is working? What do I have? What is working? And then you just acknowledge. It doesn't even have to be this vast, like, I feel grateful for. If it's just baseline is acknowledging, and then working your way up to like feeling of actual feel good feeling of gratitude. There's always a starting point, but you are the only one that can choose to start, because true gratitude is a choice. Really is.
Lori, do we share how to start this choice?
Well, we've never done it before, but we should start now.
We totally should. Motivation.
Don't even know if I said the word right. Come to think. I don't think
Matter. I'm grateful that you sang along.
Yeah, always. You got me, girl.
Always. What is your motivation maintenance? Because I have a feeling that yours will be more for the individual and mine might go another route. So I'm curious to hear
very
yours
cool.
first.
Mine definitely is individual. I get a book, a specific book. I have a beautiful book that a friend had actually gifted to me years ago. And I was always kind of saving it for something special. And then all of a sudden I realized when I started this practice that like, that is my gratitude book. And it's the only thing I write in it. And I write in it every single day. I write the date. And I write 3 things every single day that I'm grateful for. And it doesn't matter how difficult the day, I find 3 things. And sometimes they can repeat, but I try and find something new every time, because that's also one of the kind of key elements to really changing the vibration, changing the mapping, it be effective over time, is finding new things. And you're like, and at first I was always like, I don't know what else after like my favorite 10, but then that's when I started having an appreciation for like, isn't moss beautiful? Like
love moss, actually.
Yeah. And I would start to notice. Yeah. And that's actually when I kind of ran out of my go-tos, is when I actually started the process of expanding to such a bigger concept of what is beautiful and to be thankful for. And this like vast world we live in. And all of a sudden I noticed birds, and I would watch birds and I'd be like, I'm thankful I got to watch that bird play in the wind today, and there was all of a sudden now it's kind of like, I feel like I always have something new to a certain extent. And the repeats happen on, those cold, rainy days where you're like, oh, I just can't be more thankful for my warm bed, but 3 things, morning. And if you can in the evening before bed, every single day, be consistent, give yourself even 30 days and maybe even 1 out of 10, how you feel, at the beginning of the 30 days. And after the 30 days, 1 out of 10, do you feel differently, in general?
That must be so cool to reflect on those and reread them when you're having a shit day.
Yeah.
I imagine that's a very epic tool to be like, oh yeah, like little reminders, right?
It is. That's the other coolest part, is you get to kind of read back. I did one with my one from, I think, 2020, which we all know how that year went. And
what a time.
And what a time. And I just read it all through. And it was really, really cool reading all the stuff that I'm like, I forgot about that. And like, oh yeah, that was cool. Or, oh, I forgot how much I love that. I should go try that again. It was, and I have all these journals from previous years, but reading my gratitude journals, super cool.
I think that one is fantastic. You remind me of how annoying I am to hike with, because I'm the person that literally is like, oh my gosh, did you see this? It's amazing.
That's why you and I work well with our hikes. Yes.
Just like, oh, this bark. Think of this tree. It's breathing. Oh, don't even get me started about fungi. Anywho, really fucking grateful for fungi. So my moto maintenance is kind of geared toward those. Maybe you've dabbled or you practice gratitude, or you're familiar, you have a practice in place. Well, I'm a big fan of a ripple effect, because I really do think that we all have the ability to be a positive influence on people in our lives. So I'm recommending, and even if you haven't been practicing daily, you start practicing daily and then do this as well. Once a week, everyone's got a phone for the most part that is listening, I imagine. Use your phone to send 1 gratitude message a week to someone in your life. Show them appreciation. Let's spread the love and compassion, because sending that 1 little note of thanks might remind them of something in their own life to reflect and be thankful for. So I think that we should spread it around. Gratitude, good for the soul, man.
Love it. Love it.
Love it.
Gosh darn loves it.
Gosh darn love it. It is quote time.
All right.
Have a song for that.
I got one from Zig Ziglar.
Ooh, that's fun.
Yeah, I didn't realize the name until this moment. I was like, well, that's fun. Gratitude is the healthiest of all human emotions. The more you express gratitude for what you have, the more likely you will have even more to express gratitude for.
Hell yes. Mine is from Dr. Robert Holden. Way less fun name. But then we won't hold it against you, Dr. Holden. The miracle of gratitude is that it shifts your perception to such an extent that it changes the world you see. And that, my friends, is the motivation.
You've just listened to the Motivation Podcast with your host, Chrissy Van, and me, Lori Joy Kingwell.
Thanks for joining us along the ride. We've got new episodes dropping every Monday, and we're all about community. So follow us on Instagram at Motivation Podcast and visit our website at themotivation.com.
And in the meantime, tanks full and full throttle.